the ILO Global Business Network. It's based in, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. And that's because of the support we receive from you. We are becoming a lot more visible out there, and our work is being recognized. So we are being appointed on several committees and boards, both locally and internationally. So we are grateful for your support. Now, lastly, I just want to say we are there for you. While I was welcoming some of you, I repeated this statement that without you, we don't exist. We are an employers organization, and we only speak what you tell us. So please engage with the Secretariat. We want to hear from you, and then we can complement whatever you're raising with us using research. But as much as possible, we want the policy issues that we present to government to reflect what you want. You present it to us in its most raw form, the challenges you're facing, what you think we should be doing. Then it will be our responsibility to gather the evidence around it, to do a little more research, to see what best practices are, so that we can be able to engage with the government. For your information, there are a lot of reforms going on now. The Employment Act is under review. The Occupational Safety and Health Act is under review. The Workers' Compensation Act is under review. Several of those policies and legislations are under review. So we can only be your voice when we hear from you. So allow us to hear from you, give us your views, and then we will be able to engage. So thank you so much for coming again. I now want to take this honor. I know the chairman is finishing his drink, but I think he's ready. So I just want to welcome him to address us. Just to remind you, we have an excellent panel also today. Besides the keynote speaker, I didn't want to take the job of the moderator, otherwise, you know, redundancy leads to unemployment, isn't it? So I'll not speak much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Douglas. In this case, this vacancy has arisen, and I've got some temporary employment. I don't regret that. Yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, in your various capacities. I've already been introduced. My name is Nicholas Okwir, former chairperson of the Federation of Uganda Employers. Some people make mistakes, they say employees. We have to correct them. We are also employees in the various titles, but here we represent the interests of the employers. And in that theme, I just want to say, when I came in, I had two divided interests. There was a door leading to an activity for Uganda Revenue Authority, and the one coming here. I just want to say that I've also been representing you at the Uganda Revenue Authority board until the beginning of this month. So, as it says, we are representative, we are in various positions and various places. Look after the interests of you, the employers. Now, fellow CEOs and other dignitaries, our panelists, it's indeed a pleasure to welcome you for this breakfast discussion, and whose theme is productivity, technology, innovation, and sustainability reform. In responsible positions like CEOs, well, I'm sure wondering what is it, what next? What is it happening in my place of work? What is it happening to my employees? What is it happening to the method of work I've been using? And suddenly somebody said, technology has to take over. You have to be innovative. You have to think outside the box. It is in that sense that I have not seen many of you face to face, because that's what we were used to. I found it very uncomfortable. Somebody says we meet virtual, which not. And some of us, like me, who is what we call BBC, that is born before computers, it was rather strange and more difficult to adapt to it. But over the year now, the 1 year has gone, I think we have adopted. And that's why some of these discussions we are going to have, interactive as it is, helps us. When we are now meeting together like this, again now beginning to look awkward. We're now getting used to the other method of sitting and discussing virtually. So technology and innovation is going to be indeed very relevant for us in this discussion. Of course, Douglas has already given the apologies of the ED, our chairman and the deputy. I step in happily as the immediate past chairman, therefore. And I am looking forward to all of you giving an input when the panelists come over to this discussion. Give us, where you can, those who can give us their current experiences on how they are managing the activities of their business and their employees. Many, I will give you the example of URA where I've been. In that tower, there are over 2,000, there are about 2,000 employees. And suddenly, you have to keep social distance. And social distance became a challenge. So what was the immediate urgent thing? Of course, the testing had to be done and all that. And the other most urgent part was, how can you enable them to continue working without feeling that they are no longer wanted? So there was an immediate cost. You had to provide them with laptops and such things so that they could work from home. While they are working from home, you have to improve on those who are handling the what? The servers and all that to receive the information from them. And the other part is you had also to cater for psychological comfort in the sense that they had to know while working at home, they were also healthy. So the health part also came in. So you're with 2,000 people. That was easier part. How about the borders? These are, all of you have unique situations. That's what I'm trying to drive at. At the borders, there were similar things where you had to, how do you get people on working? For example, the lorries had to continue coming through. Those who are working 24/7, how do you handle them? And how do you handle what you call the shifts? But those are the unique scenarios that each employer and CEO had to manage. As a board then, we were called upon to make quick decisions on certain expenses which are necessary. So as a CEO, I'm sure you have to prepare documents and invite your board to give you something outside your budget. We don't like to hear that experience. The worst part, of course, was to trim down on your staffing and to reduce on some of those activities because demand came down. Demand for your services, demand for your products. I think the service industry here, for example, there's one young lady I've met here. She has said, you survived the reduction in staff. I said, yes. So there was essential and there's also what you don't require. But how do you manage that? Because people had to continue work. Are you paying them off? Are you laying them off permanently? Those are some of the changes that came about. And the Federation, as the ED has said, is ready to assist you in managing some of this. I'm myself very happy to hear from the ED that we have now been given a forum with the president. That is something important, and we should make use of it. And
Thank you very much, the Chair and the Executive Director, for those very good words. Allow me at this juncture invite our key note speaker, who is also online. I hope he is. Yeah, who is online to take us through this discussion. Mr. Anders Wegen, you're welcome. He is a co-founder and a partner of Tinker Norway, and he will be digesting for us the theme, which will lead us to the panel discussion. You're most
Good morning.
welcome.
Do you hear me?
Good morning, Andy.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for inviting me for this breakfast meeting, and congrats with your Diamond Jubilee Federation. It's an impressive task to have survived 60 years in this business. I'm a bit jealous of you guys who are able to have physical meetings. In Norway, we are still in a semi-lockdown, so we're not allowed to have any physical meetings. We're not even allowed to have visitors in our own homes. So it is indeed a very strange and special time we're going through. I'm going to take you through a short presentation. I have about 30 minutes. Let's see if we can get the host has disabled participant screen sharing. I need to be able to share my screen to do the presentation. So if you can allow me to do that, that would be very good. Okay, now we are there. Okay, so we're ready to go. Tinker is a company that is working on innovation and innovation management in many parts of the world, mainly in Europe. And we are, I'm not sure, Douglas, whether we are the only member in Norway, but we are indeed one of the first Norwegian members of the Federation. And the reason that we are a member of the Federation is, of course, that we find the Federation of Uganda Employers to be a highly competent and very important partner and facilitator of growth and development in businesses in Uganda. And we're also learning a lot from the Federation ourselves. So we're very proud and honored to be invited to do this keynote. What I'm going to take you through today quickly is a bit of the COVID status as it is right now, how the world has responded to it, what we've learned from it, and then at the end I'm just going to take a moment to reflect on a few initiatives that we are working on together with the Federation. Douglas briefly mentioned it earlier. And I also just have to apologize for if you hear a lot of high noises. It's because we're still on homeschooling in my home. So I have 3 kids who at least know how to use their voice, which I guess is a good thing. All right, let's start here with the COVID stats. Now, obviously, in a global pandemic, a lot of the stats are the official stats are not necessarily the right ones. So we don't really know everything about COVID yet, and some of this we might never know. But officially, we have registered about 170 million cases of COVID. These are the official numbers. Some researchers say that we should probably multiply this by 2 or even by 3 to have the actual cases. We have registered 3.5 million dead. That could also be multiplied by 2 to 3%. So it's no doubt no one has even ever doubted it, I guess. But it is a really, really serious and dire pandemic. And we're still struggling with it. We've been just through the third wave. We thought last summer that maybe we had been able to curb it, at least here in Europe. But then we got the second wave and the third wave. And now we are worried that we might get the fourth wave. Now, not only talking about the hundreds of millions of people that are actually becoming ill from this, and the millions of people who have died from the pandemic, there are also a lot of other consequences that we have to tackle and have to deal with. We see that the official unemployment rate in many countries are from 2 to 5% up. That could also be multiplied, probably not as much, but we know that it's very high. Most countries in the world are now in recession, which basically means that they are the economy is shrinking, not growing. Tourism has collapsed, and for many countries, tourism is a key source of income. So when that has happened, it's serious for the whole economy for the nations. Retail is down 20 to 97% in some countries. Germany has 97% down in retail. So all over the picture, you see a negative development. There is one winner, though. There's one big winner. That is Big Pharma, who have produced the vaccines. Some of them are up on the share price is up 500 to 700%. Some of the smaller ones. So it's definitely, some of them have made big money. But overall, we see very serious picture. And now I haven't even touched upon the millions of young people who have lost their education, that are not being trained at all. We have issues, at least in the Western world, with loneliness, increase in mental illness, etc. So indeed, this is serious stuff. But on the other side, I mean, it is serious, and I'm not trying to downplay the seriousness of it. But at the same time, we see that there has been a quite impressive response on the pandemic. The picture you see up on the right here, that is a picture of air quality over Italy. January 2020 is on the left side there, and you see the orange and red, that is pollution over Italy. And you see already in March, just 2 months after, it's almost gone. So the environment, the pandemic has been a good thing, at least in some ways. But we also see it in many other ways. We see it, for instance, that we've had massive leaps in technology. We have schools that have gone online. Homeschooling has been more or less the rule in the countries that have infrastructure that allows for it. We have kids now down to 5, 6 years old who are becoming technology natives. They know more about how to work their iPads and their smartphones and their computers than I do, that have been working on innovation for 15 to 20 years. So it is quite impressive, and the whole system has adapted to this. In many countries, we have had rapid changes of the laws to allow for online schooling. We have changed how teachers teach. We have changed how tools we use. So the change there has been really impressive. We also see that web shopping has rocketed. That's a good thing for the web shops, very not so much for the retail business, but it also has produced a lot of new opportunities for transport, for people delivering goods. Web conferences like I am part of now has gone through the roof. And that is maybe one of the things that might change, that is a disruptive change. This might change how conferences are held for a long period of time. It's hard to imagine that just 2 years ago, if I wanted to have a meeting in my hometown, we would go to a local hotel, book a conference room, and sit down and work with it together. Now we would rather do it on Teams or on Zoom or on any of the other web platforms. And there's actually some research showing that when you do it digitally, we're getting better results. We are doing in 2 hours what we would normally do in 4, 5, or 6 hours on a physical workshop. There are some negative side effects of this, of course, as well. For instance, that we are social beings. We need to meet. We need to interact physically from time to time. So I guess in the future we will see sort of a mix between the digital conferences and the physical ones. And we are using digital entertainment to much higher degree than we used to do. So we've seen the leaps in tech, and we also see that the pandemic response in itself has been unbelievably fast. If you go 10 years back, it took 2 to 3 years just to develop a prototype of a vaccine. In March 2020, it took 40 hours by using the latest technology to actually have a proper prototype of a vaccine ready, and then started the testing and everything. And we thought in March 2020 that if everything went smoothly, we would have our first approved vaccine maybe by the end of 2022. And then we got it late 2020, which is just unbelievably fast. And it really shows how quickly development goes if we need to. We had a launch in March also, 2020, of something called the Codex DNA that synthesizes genes in 24 hours. That used to take a year. So we see that this just the approach to the pandemic in itself has changed the world in so many ways. Things are going much faster now, and a lot of the things that have been developed to tackle the pandemic is applicable to other illnesses and other diseases. For instance, cancer research have also taken massive leaps because of the development we've done on the pandemic. We see mobility and transport change that might be lasting. In many European countries, we have had traffic problems. I've been a few times in Kampala as well, so I know that our kind of traffic jams are just peanuts compared to yours. But still, I mean, there is the thing, when people start working from home, when we have less physical conferences, when we do more home shopping, then we also need to transport less. And it doesn't take a very high decrease in transport needs before you actually solve a lot of your issues. If you go down 2 to 3%, then most of your jams are gone. So this might actually be a lasting change. And at least in Norway, a lot of the infrastructure projects are now being postponed or canceled because we're not really sure whether we need them at all. We see some cultural change that has also happened quite quickly. People spend obviously more time at home, and a few first months after the pandemic hit, people got quite desperate from that. It was, I mean, they love their family and all, but staying together 24 hours a day, every day, for every week, for every month, I have to be honest, it can drive some people nuts. But then after summer, we saw more and more people started to appreciate it. They said, no, this is good. We work in a different pace. We spend more time together. We get more family time. So, and now we're seeing, again, in at least some of the European countries, that people are working in different hours than they used to. So they start later in the day, and then they end earlier during the day, but then they start working again in the evening, because they have a more flexible schedule. And research now shows that staff are actually being more effective, not less effective than many people expected when you start working from home, but they're being more effective. And they get to do more work on lesser amount of time. So companies that are embracing home offices are actually becoming more productive. Obviously with some exceptions. If you are working in industry producing stuff and you need machines, it's not much help for you being home. And we actually see also increased fertility, which is a bit fun. We've had fertility rates in European countries on below 1 for years and years. And 2020, suddenly it jumped. So now we have a positive fertility rate, which is a good thing in most European countries, as we've had a decreasing population for some time. We also see a trend of backsourcing. That is just in the beginning. It had started a bit before the pandemic as well, but now we see that it is accelerating, and we see it's accelerating to a lot of different industries. Pharma is one of them. Obviously, when you need a lot of vaccines, for instance, or medication for COVID, it's not very practical that you rely on India to produce it, when India also have a pandemic and they need all the stuff themselves. And it also hampers transportation, so it wasn't very easy to get it transported. So in most European countries now, they are starting to put up their own factories to produce basic medication and other medical equipment. We see it also in IT tech. More and more companies are backsourcing it, and we see it in production. All of it because the pandemic has showed us that transportation, which we thought only 2 years ago was just a practicality, has now proven to be a challenge. And we don't know how long we have COVID-19, but we know that we could expect another global pandemic every 10 years. And with the global pandemic coming every 10 years, we had the swine flu, that's like 10, 15 years ago. Before that, we had the bird flu. So these things are happening every now and again. We need to adapt to it because we cannot afford this kind of global crisis many times. And we also see some research that they call the survival of the kindest instead of survival of the strongest, which sort of shows that we see the businesses that are reducing, now we're talking small business, that are reducing their profit expectations, but are taking more humane considerations. For instance, not expecting their staff to work more than the average amount of time, are giving them sick leave when they need it, are catering for longer paternity leaves, etc. They are also surviving longer because the mindset, not only of the people, but also of the markets are changing. Now, this hasn't been a validated research yet, but there is some research going in that direction. So we've responded in so many different ways, and it's so sort of all-raking. It happens everywhere in the society. So you would expect that at least some of these changes are lasting. We don't know that yet. We've had crises before, and it only takes a year or two before we sort of head back into where we used to be. But this crisis has been so huge and so complex that we are actually expecting some very lasting changes. And we see that, for instance, in the travel industry, that now a lot of companies have been disrupted out, but then some are adapting to a completely new mindset. So what are the results of this? Well, first of all, and that might have been the biggest sort of epiphany of it all, is that we now know that we can change habits globally and we can do it fast if we need to. This has been one of the biggest discussions. I mean, we've had a climate crisis for 10, 15 years, and it has been extremely difficult to change habits and change the ways people are working, acting, interacting, consuming, traveling, etc. And most people thought it wouldn't be possible to do it because we are so heterogeneous and it's so complex. But when the pandemic hit, we proved that we were actually able to do it. We could change habits globally, and we could do it fast. And it has been in areas we really, really thought was completely impossible to change. Homeschooling is one of them that has really taken massive steps. Also interesting is that we see an increasing number of people say they want change. All of us have been working with change management and innovation and creating innovative cultures. We know that change is always difficult and it always creates some kind of friction. But now we see an increasing number of people saying, no, they were skeptical to all these changes that happened. I said earlier that people were skeptical for the 2 or 3 first months after the pandemic hit. But then they sort of get used to it and they see that, no, this might be better. For some it's not. But for some it's really, that it has really been taking a few steps in the right direction. So more people want change. They want change in society, but they also want change in their daily lives, and they want changes in their workplace. We see that a lot of products and services has to change. Like, for instance, we now are having pandemic-safe travel industry. Most people think that the time for mass tourism is not completely over, but it will change. Putting 8,000 people, 8,000 visitors and staff into a big cruise boat might be, well, at least it will take a few years before people will feel that it's safe. And so they're going more and more over to individual tourism products, where Uganda has a head start, because that is the kind of tourism that has been produced in Uganda. And it's also in other areas. All cars are now having better ventilation systems. All public transports new public transports are made in a different way. Buildings are being built in a different way. Health centers, hospitals that has been drawn and planned, but they haven't really started to build it. They're now taking the drawings back and redesigning it because it needs to be pandemic safe. And it has to be more flexible, because we know now that every public building has to be flexible enough so that it can change its uses if something changes in the future or something like a pandemic hits. And some products and services are being disrupted out of the market. How big that is going to be, we don't know yet, but for instance, air traffic is going through a crisis. And most people believe that at least 2 or 3 of the bigger air companies are going to go bankrupt during this year. Travel industry in general, you will see a lot of bankruptcies, partly because there hasn't been any business for the last couple of years, but also because the kind of business they have been delivering will not be interesting anymore. So change is accelerating. It has been accelerating for some time already, but it's even faster now. Now, I had a presentation for you guys. It's 2 years ago. I also went to a CEO breakfast meeting, and I showed you these pictures that I'm showing you now. This is what we call in Tinker, we call this the innovation era. These are all developments that are ongoing or are already being developed. The lady with the glasses, the police lady, she's having computer glasses so that she can identify every person she looks at and see whether they have a criminal track record. The meat you see is artificial meat being produced in a laboratory. When I presented this 2 years ago, for at least some of you, it was still in the research stage. Now it's being rolled out in many of the bigger hamburger bars. Completely artificial meat. The pill here on the top right side, that is a pill you can swallow, and it will analyze all your intestines and send the information by computer to your local doctor, so that you don't have to go through all these really, really tough medical examinations. In the center down, you see the building there. That's a 3D printer actually building an actual house. No builders need, no wood needed, just artificial material and a big 3D printer. And the shirt you see next to it is a smart shirt that you can use when you do your exercise. And the smart shirt will tell you how much oxygen you're using, what your lung capacity is, whether you're building in risk for a heart attack, etc. Now, this is 2 years ago. All of these things that are in this picture here is now rolled out in the market. And it has, well, except for the one on the down left side, which is an elevator to the moon. I mean, that is, I'm not quite sure why they need an elevator to the moon yet, but at least it's there. So development is happening so fast. And we've called this the innovation era. The developments are happening so fast that those who are not sort of in front, who are investing in change, will necessarily lose out. 2 years ago, we thought this would happen in most sectors, but probably not in education and not so much in health. Now we see no, it will happen everywhere. It will happen in education. It has happened in health. It's even happening in local government. We have now local governments that are changing, that are being completely disruptive. They don't even have a city house anymore, or city hall. They've moved everyone out of the city hall. Meetings are being held on Teams, or maybe sometimes they rent a local restaurant or a local pub for their official meetings. And by that, the local government don't have to spend a lot of money on maintaining or buying or renting buildings. The money they used to spend on those things are now being spent on local business, so that you're actually creating a good business environment instead of investing in big, huge buildings. So it is happening now everywhere, which means that we need to step up. Change happens faster. Markets are continuously and rapidly developing. That has always happened, but it's going faster and faster. And as I said, the pandemic has reduced our resistance to change, and needs and expectations change. So some people are now actually saying that we might go from an era of innovation to an area of disruption, because it's happening so fast. And those businesses who are not on top of this, or those in the public sector who are not on top of this, will lose out. So what we need now is to build competence on innovation, change management, and innovation-friendly organizations. That is the only way ahead. I mean, some businesses will look into their crystal ball and say, no, our product is so good, there are so many people needing this, and our customer base is so strong that we will most probably survive. For instance, the water industry have said that for years and years and years. But now there is disruption in the water industry as well. We're now able to produce good, high quality fresh water out of seawater. We're now able to transport it so cheaply and so far that private sector actors are taking over more and more of that market as well. So everyone, no matter what they're working, has to be focused on change management and innovation-friendly organizations. This is the innovation system that we've developed in Tinker, and that we use as our basis for everything we do on innovation. And it is a good picture of where you have to work on innovation in order to be able to transform. And if we look into what has happened over the last 2 years, we see that those companies that had a strong culture for change, that were able to move quickly, and were able to change quickly, also were able to profit from the pandemic. Now, as told you, the pharmaceutical industry was one of them, but also all the tech companies have had a very, very good year because they have been able to deliver a very short time span. They've been able to deliver products that the market needed. So you need to work on the culture, and you also need to have leadership. You need to have a very strong leadership that gives a very strong direction what you want to do, but it also has to be open enough so that you can actually use the capacity of your staff in the best possible way. You need to have a strategy. You need to have a structure, and you need to allocate the right amount of resources into your innovation work. And resources here is not necessarily that you have to invest a lot of money on innovations, but it could also mean that you need to invest in capacity for your staff. They need to know how to work systemically, strategically with innovation. Because for most companies and for most organizations, it is still not a very systemic approach. They do things that they just come up with, sometimes by coincidence, sometimes by market analysis, but how they work with the challenges and the new products is very often not systematically enough. I'm going to show you here, this is very complex, and I'm not sure whether you can even see it where you're sitting now, but this, what we have here is a dashboard for innovation scaling that we have developed for a humanitarian organization. Now, this is for a humanitarian organization. They're not selling anything. They're not dependent of a market, but they know that they need to have a systemic approach to development, innovation, and scaling, because that's how they can produce the best results for their target group. And this is the prototype of this dashboard, but it shows all the different elements of only the scaling phase of an innovation. How are you going to reach after you've developed something? You have a product, or you have a service, or you have an innovative organization. How will this be scaled either within the organization or to reach more countries or more target groups? You see, it is quite complex. It's a lot of decisions that has to be made throughout. You have to have a very good strategy. You have to know that you have the right people to work with. You have to be able to plan it and follow it up continuously. So it is complex. And all those organizations that focus on it, I promise you, in 5 to 10 years, they will still be there. Those organizations that are not focusing on this will most likely lose out. In the 80s, they could last for 20 years. In the 70s, they could last for 40 years. Now in 2020s, they might last for 2 to 3 years. It used to be newly established companies would last, we would lose maybe between 20 and 40% of them within the first year or first 2 years. Now it's more up to 80% because you're not able to adapt and change fast enough. All right, I'm going to end with saying a few words about plans for the future. Now, one of the key assignments of the Federation of Uganda Employers is capacity building, and we've been, as Douglas briefly mentioned, we've been talking about how can we build innovation capacity with the FUE members. And we are coming up now, we're discussing now a few different approaches, and I just want to share them briefly with you. And I'm very much interested in feedbacks on this, whether this is interesting, whether you would actually invest time and money in participating in things like this. Some of the plans we have is that we want to do a series of breakfast meetings on different aspects on innovation. That would be short, maybe once per month, breakfast meetings where we address issues like scaling, for instance, innovation management, the new ISO standard for innovation management. How do you different approaches to innovation, different tools? How could you use lean startup, or how could you use design thinking, etc. 10 to 12 breakfast meetings scattered through the year, just to give you some inspiration, some thoughts, and some ideas on what you can do and where you can go. We're also discussing three different kinds of innovation management training. One introductory, all of them part-time, I have to say that, all of them part-time, but an introductory course lasting approximately 6 weeks, where we go through all the aspects of innovation. What does the latest research show? What works, what doesn't? How can you develop an innovative organization? And then an intermediate course lasting 4 months, where we go more in depth and where we also work on specific challenges that you have in your organization. And then an advanced course lasting 8 months, specifically targeted at management and middle management on how to lead or develop and lead innovative organizations. We are working on the details now, but it would be interesting to hear from you whether you think this is interesting and if this is something you would like to invest in. We're also discussing innovation mentoring, which would be a mentoring service where you can call in and then we can discuss actual challenges that you have and discuss actual possible solutions to those challenges. Now, one of the good things is that through the pandemic, we have also become better at using these kind of digital tools that we have. So it means that we could provide those services from wherever we are in the world to wherever you are in the world. And I think it could be a good way for you to at least have someone to discuss with. You see that in many organizations, they assign 1 or 2 or 3 people to be head of innovation, to be in charge of innovation. That can be a very good idea, but I'm promising you that's a lonely position to be in. If you are the one working on innovation, and then the rest of the management team is working on profit maximizing short term, then it is really hard to be that person. So having some kind of mentoring or focus group organization here I think that could be a very good thing. All right, I'm through, people. If you have any questions or any comments or anything, I'm more than happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anders. Thank you so much. It has been very interesting listening from you. One thing caught my eyes. The ways won't open new doors. Very interesting. But I was also touched when you said an increasing number says they won't change. I don't know the reason behind that thinking. Yeah, I think it's a good one. And at this time, I would like to open the floor for any question, any clarification from members, the CEOs who are here. But could be also another idea towards this before we can move on to another agenda item. The floor is open, and I just want to say that because of COVID-19, I think they were not able to give us the mics which move around. However, if you have a question, you can raise your hand and you can step forward, or you can, you're allowed enough, but I think it would be good if you step forward to enable and also get it. Yes.
Okay, morning everyone. Thank you very much, Anders, for the presentation. I know it has showed the global aspect. However, I wanted to find out, we've tried working from home and we are again doing it. However, is there any advice that you can give us basing on the trends, let's say in Europe, on how you can measure productivity or how you can track that people are working at home. Let's say some of our certain services that are not, okay, let's say like an accountant, you can know that an accountant is online, they're filling in this, but there are services that are difficult to measure. Do you have any trends, let's say in Europe, that you're using to measure staff productivity while at home? Thank you.
That's a good, yes.
Morning to all, protocol observed. I would need to get more clarification about the innovation in the soft skills as far as Federation of Uganda Employees is concerned, having got that testimony that old doors will not open for the new doors. We are seeing things are changing completely. We are sending people at home, as my colleague has alluded, but getting the yields and people changing is becoming still a complex on our side. So would we be in position to get how really we are prepared for soft skilling? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yes.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Mine is about capacity building. I think I must appreciate the presentation you made and the idea of having innovation management training, advanced courses online. I think it's something for us really to take up. As the change is coming, we really need to adapt. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Jen. Thanks, Andy, for the presentation. My concern is about the innovation, especially for the essential service providers, especially in our country. You'll find that whereas, like our colleague has put it, the accountants, you can be able to monitor them at home, but you find the technical persons have to be in the field. Now, how are we going to incorporate this kind of technology? Probably someone has to fix a pipe somewhere, someone has to climb a transformer somewhere. How can we handle that in the current technology upcoming? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anders, would you like to respond to those before we can get more?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. They're good questions. To the first one, on how can we measure productivity, that is definitely an interesting question. And what we see that first of all, it's important to emphasize that even if people are working from home, they should not be working alone. So we're seeing an increasing use of digital tools and digital meeting settings where you actually work together through the computers, so that you can both share and you could also follow up on staff regularly to see whether they are performing or not. It's we going more and more over to what we call a result-based management, which means that we are looking at what have you done, what are your results by the end of the day or by the end of the week, or in specific projects or programs, rather than being focused on how you do it or when you do it. So that kind of flexibility is important, but you need to put in place good systems for follow-up. Interestingly, this is also another trend in employment HR issues, that we're going more and more over to a trust-based system where if you go 20, 30 years back, the management often had this suspicion that unless the staff were strictly followed up, they wouldn't do their work. And to now, where we have an increasing acceptance that most people want to work and they want to do a good job. And if they are given the freedom to do it in the best possible way they see, they will do it better and they will perform better results. So it's a change of mindset as well, and that is one of the things that we're discussing in the training programs when we work on innovation management. Is the trust aspect. What is it? What do you really need to measure? What is important to measure? Where does the profitability in the company lies? Where can you give the staff more trust? It's also, I think, one of you mentioned is having innovation management training online, which is a good idea. But there is also what we've learned. One of the things that we've learned is that digital meetings is very good for many purposes, but they also have a few negative sides. I mentioned in my presentation the value of socializing, the value of being together, the value of seeing each other eye to eye and work physically together on projects. So the probably ideal solution would be to combine digital meetings, webinars, etc., with physical meetings and workshops. Because we are social animals. I mean, I don't think it's possible to say something else. I mean, we are social animals. We need people around us. And digital tools can only to a certain extent fix that for us. At least for now. It might be that the development goes so rapidly that in some years from now, we are becoming digital animals. It's a bit sad, but it can happen. And then it's also important, I think, to say that there are some areas where you cannot do, some jobs you cannot do from home, especially in the technical field. You have to climb and you have to build and you have to do all these things. There is changes there as well. I mean, on the technical side. In Norway now, which is a fairly big country with not a lot of people in it, we have a lot of nature and we have a lot of power cords going through nature. Now, if we have a storm and one of the trees fall down on the power cords, and the whole village loses its electricity, 10 years ago or 5 years ago, we would then take a car or a helicopter and travel out to find out where this was. And then when we found out where that tree had fallen, we would send in a team of people to fix it. Now we use drones. So immediately after something has happened, we send out drones and they find out where this problem lies faster than we do. Then when we found that, then we send in another drone who brings in all the equipment we need. And then we've made sure that the power cords are adapted to the new technology. So you don't really need a ladder or anything. You can fix it from the ground. And then the system basically, with a little bit of help from people, still fixes itself. And so the automation of the technical field is happening very, very, very quick. Accountants, I'm not sure how many of you who are accountants, but that is one of the businesses that are expected to be disrupted out of the market within 5 to 10 years. I'm in our company, we're not using an accountant anymore. We're using a program. We're using software where we just scan our receipts. It's stored in the computer. The computer is learning, it's machine learning, so they know on which account to put it. And then at the end of the year, I just press one button and my yearly account is finished. And it's sent automatically to the bank. All the invoices I get it straight into my computer, I approve it in the computer, and it's paid automatically because my software is cooperating with the software of the bank. So this is happening now, and it's happening fast. So a lot of the technical jobs we're doing now will probably be disrupted out, and then some of the more physical ones will remain, and some of them will always remain, I presume. Nursing also is like working with people in hospitals is probably going to linger for a while, but there are some research now showing that robotics are actually better at being a good nurse than well-trained people in some areas, which is also a bit sad. But I'm not sure whether that will ever sort of hit the market. But it's interesting perspectives that all of us more or less are replaceable by a machine within 5 to 10 years. Probably not on the fertility side, but on all the other sides that could happen. I don't know if I answered everything now, did I? I think so.
Sure. Thank you so much for those responses. And really, it's a little hearing that most of the physical presence and some other opportunities are going to be lost if we go that style. For the interest of time, because we are supposed to end this breakfast at 10, and when I look at my watch, just a few minutes, around 34. So we need to speed up. And for this case, I think I want us to leave that at that. Thank you so much, Anders, for the good presentation and the response. And thanks to our colleagues for the good questions. Really, I've liked the questions and the answers. Thanks so much. Allow me at this time, we move on to our panel discussion. And I would like to invite our panelists who are going to take us through the session. And we have 4 panelists. They were representatively selected from sectors, and they have all the expertise required to have a very good panel. Allow me invite Dr. Nahamia Wilfred. Dr. Nahamia Wilfred is currently the Deputy Executive Secretary for UBTEB. And he holds a PhD in economics and master's degree in economics policy and planning. He possesses over 15 years experience in university teaching and management of papers in conference at international levels. He has extensively participated in ongoing TVET reforms that aims at employer-led TVET in the training and assessment of TVET graduates. And outside that, he is an appropriator of Hotel Deluxe in Ruvirizi. So you're most welcome, Mr. Nahamia Wilfred. The second panelist we have is Ms. Jean Mutabazi. Jean Mutabazi is the Chief Operations Officer of Financial Sector Deepening Uganda. She's a forward-thinking, innovative technology enthusiast and has over 17 years of experience in audit, digital business process, re-engineering, risk management, compliance, accounting, and finance. You're most welcome. The third on our panel is Mr. Rajesh Chaplot. Mr. Rajesh Chaplot is the recipient of the Golden Jubilee Award from His Excellency the President of Uganda, which is the highest civilian award of the government of Uganda. He is also a recipient of Pravis Baharabia Saman Award, which is the highest non-resident Indian award from His Excellency the President of India. He is chairing a technical working group for the Presidential Investors Roundtable Conference. He is on the board of Private Sector Foundation Uganda. He was a past chairperson of the Indian Association Uganda and past board member of Uganda Manufacturers Association. You're most welcome. Our fourth panelist is Mr. Ron Kawamara. Ron Kawamara joined Jumuiya in 2014 as a country manager for Jumuiya Food in Uganda. Since then, Ron has taken up more responsibilities in Jumuiya, managing Jumuiya food operations across East Africa until 2018. He is today the CEO of Jumuiya Uganda, and prior to Jumuiya, Ron worked for People Connect, startup in the San Francisco area, USA, as the business development manager. You're most welcome, sir. This is our panel of the day, and looking at the biography, it was really fitting that we have them to unpack this theme of the day, also riding on what Anders has shared with us. It is really interesting, and I believe we'll have a very interesting discussion. I have some guiding questions which I would like to share with you. These questions will guide our discussion, but before we go to that, allow me give each one of you 1 or 2 minutes to introduce yourselves, much as I've spoken, but it's very critical. I will start from my far left, right?
Good morning. My name is Ron Kawamara, and I'm CEO of Jumuiya, but before Jumuiya, I was in the tech space. I started a company called Hello Food. I'm not sure if many of you remember Hello Food from 2013, which later became Jumuiya Food, and so I'm very excited about technology and have experience in about 5 African countries. But today I manage Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania for Jumuiya. I'm excited to be part of this panel. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Rajesh Chaplot. I represent a group of companies. Among them is Graphic System, which is a packaging and advertisement products producing company. Another is Fabrication System, which is a civil construction, metal fabrication, and we represent a franchise of Otis Elevators in Uganda. And another is Crown Packaging Limited, which manufactures metal crowns for the beverage industries. And I think some other introduction has been already given, so thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jean Mutabazi Kasirye. It's important to add the Kasirye, unless my husband disowns me. I work for financial sector deepening in Uganda, the leading think and do tank in financial deepening, and we basically kind of try to make sure that we provide technical assistance and catalytic grants to mostly MSMEs and youth, refugees, women, the underserved, so they can get into the digital economy. Before that, I worked for NSSF for a long time. I'm sure Milton Award is looking at me saying, how can I disown? So I'm very new in FSD Uganda. Key to this conversation, I do go to school at MIT, and I'm obsessive about technology and people and how we can bring that mix together. So I'm happy to be here so we can have a conversation on how we can merge the two and get the best out of both worlds. Thank you so much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Nahamia Wilfred. Currently, I work as a Deputy Executive Secretary with Uganda Business and Technical Examinations Board. That's a body under the Ministry of Education that assesses all the diploma and certificate students at various levels in the technical institutes and colleges in the country, and we are among those that produce the technicians that most of you use. But previously I have taught in the university and with an area of specialization in poverty and development. I'm happy to see one of my first teachers here at the university, Dr. Daisy. She's up there. As whenever you see your teachers, you get happy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that brief introduction. I just have to, all these questions I've shared with you will be general, and each one be responding in 2 minutes on each question. That's how I've divided, so that we are able to have it done in a few ways. Like we've heard from Anders' presentation, I know he has talked more about the status of COVID and the rest. We may not go deep in the details, but we want to bring it in the context of Uganda. If I may start from Dr. Nahamia, briefly tell us how the COVID pandemic has affected business generally in Uganda.
Thank you, moderator. And COVID has affected the country, business in several areas. As you may be aware, the growth forecast was revised downwards from about 6% to 3%, and the economy slowed down, and that certainly affected the businesses in several areas. As you are aware, when COVID came in, 20 and 21 financial year projected a rise in poverty, as you may note, due to many people faced a reduction in incomes, businesses closed, was loss of demand for the various domestic products, and as such, businesses really slowed down. People ate the capital as the lockdown came in. They couldn't, those with low incomes that were operating businesses now started eating on the capital. There were various, of course, shortfalls in domestic revenue, and once the domestic revenue falls down, then that compelled the government even to borrow. And when you borrow both internally and externally, at the end of the day, businesses get affected as the money in circulation reduces. But of course, there was also a lot of disruption in services, in health, in education, a sector where I belong. That has a lot of effects, the trickle-down effects. When education institutions closed down, they are in the supply chain, those supplying food, those supplying firewood to the institutions, and several other effects were all affected. And as such, there were those various issues. And of course, the businesses in the tourism sector and all associated effects when tourism sector literally shut down, then the tour guiding subsector, the transport subsector, the food subsector, and all those related closed down. And of course, the businesses, a number of them could not service the loans, and that had a lot of implications. And since they could not service the loans and other obligations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jean, would you like to compliment?
I'd like to start with a story.
Yes.
Just before I get into that answer. And I'd like to use, Douglas, allow me to use you as an example. So Douglas leaves office and he's walking home, singing, dancing on the street. And when he gets home, he finds that his wife and children are tied up and they've been beaten very bad. However, key to that conversation is that there's a big, fat, tall man sitting in daddy's chair. Most Ugandans have daddy's chairs. And so he looks at this man who's twice his height, three times his weight. And in Douglas's mind, two things happen. He remembers he has a basement, a gym in the basement. So what does Douglas do? He runs to the basement to work out so he can come and beat up the fat man, isn't it? And after beating the fat man, he will then be able to rescue his family. That is what exactly happened before COVID, yeah? We were walking from work, happy, excited, and we got into our household and our families had been tied up. However, I'll tell you what that story is very critical for me. I borrowed it from a friend who uses it over and over again, is that when do you go to the gym? And happily, we went to the gym early. Why did we go to the gym early? Because we had listened to too many presentations on the future of work. I'm sure everyone in this room had listened to them. 2018, remember those stories, future of work? And everyone, Dubai, Kenya, South Africa, all presenters had future of work if you were a little bit interested in the tech space. So we listened so much, we actually decided to believe them that there was a future outside what was going to happen to us. So, getting out of the comfort zone. And what did we do? We made presentations, our own presentations on the future of work. And thereafter, we decided to implement. So when I share my story, for us, the impact of COVID was actually kind of much lower than the total market because we made our own presentations and implemented the solution. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that story. It's a very interesting one. Yes, Mr. Rajesh.
Thank you. According to me, this COVID-19 pandemic has affected in two ways the businesses. The one is economically, and second is different ways of doing business have been adopted, and whichever company has adopted was more successful and was more able to fight this pandemic. Now let me explain what I mean. Because of the national and international lockdowns, the consumer demands went down all over the world, including Uganda. Also, the output of many industries went down because of this lockdown. And many of the industries in the manufacturing sector, then the tourism sector, hospitality, and the airlines business suffered the most. Now, when we talk about change of doing business, many companies in Uganda adopted the new ways of doing business successfully, and they have coped up the COVID situation in a much better way. I will give you example of the beverage industries in Uganda. In spite of all the bars were closed for more than 1 year, the beer industry specifically has maintained the sales for all that 1 year. And the reason, let me tell you the reason. They have developed one mobile app, they went into e-commerce, and they focused on the digital marketing. And because of that, their sales were maintained. And I know for sure because we supply labels to them. And so in spite of all the bars closed, because of new innovative ways of doing business, they were successful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a positive one. Yes, Mr. Ron.
I'm not sure if it's positive. It means that the SOPs are not being followed to the T. No, indeed, COVID-19 has had feel and echoes, has been devastating to many industries, and it's weird to say this now because we don't know where. It's weird for me to say this now because we don't know where the bottom is. We're still in the middle of this crisis, and with examples we've seen in India, that it can get really bad before it comes to an end. I want to take it from a consumer perspective. How have consumers responded to this? My perspective at Dreamia is that for the first time we see that consumers are prioritizing safety, the health safety, alongside price, alongside brand, and consumers are also voting with their wallet. They're very uncertain about these times. So what are they doing? They're focusing on the essentials. So we've seen some segments of the businesses being affected much more. At Dreamia, we've seen a shift of customers from the traditional electronics category, in fashion, and consumers more focused on basic essentials, grocery, medicine, things they need for the home, to be able to work from home. And that also, to an extent, has been affected by the global trends, the supply chain. A lot of traders, Ugandans, were used to, they go to China, they fill a container, they bring it back, they sell. They go to Turkey, they go to Dubai. The reality is for the bigger part of the last 1 year, that has been disrupted. So what do we have? Is the supply chain has become more expensive. Products that we import into the country have become more expensive. So we see consumers opting to buy locally made products, which are mainly dominated in the FMCG categories. And so consumers are driving what companies are doing. And then from an employer perspective, we've seen that companies that were diversified, companies that had a strong presence online have fared much better. And so we see that more and more companies go online, especially the informal sector. We started at Dreamia, the biggest players were mainly the big distributors, the big brands. What we've seen is that now more than ever, small traders, the informal market has come online and is changing the nature of the online trade. We see also that companies are choosing to really leverage these efficiencies. What have we learned so far is that as a business, we can do more work with less people. We don't have to have everybody come into work. So our need for spaces is becoming less. As he mentioned about companies innovating and continuing to make sales, we will see that in the next 2 or 3 years, some of these efficiencies will eventually reach the customers, hopefully reducing how much they have to pay, and in a way also stimulating the demand for these products. And so it's not very clear indeed which one of these trends will stick. I will say that what we've seen from a Dreamia perspective is that the customers who came at a time where they had no option, during May last year when we had a full lockdown of the country, these customers are coming back. They're happy with online, so we see some of those trends will stick. We've seen another impact has been on the ecosystem of delivery. During May and June, when the whole country was under lockdown, we saw a big uptake of logistics companies, people who started motorcycles, trucks, and vans to move cargo and to move goods either from supermarkets, from Kampala to the tier 2 and tier 3 towns. Those companies are still in existence. So we see that there's a boom of the ecosystem that supports the new trade that came with COVID-19. My hope is that the government and others continue to support them at a time where the demand is not as high, but the innovations are quite timely.
For that response, I see we tend to somehow agree that there have been also a positive side of the COVID-19 in terms of how business are moving, while others have really not been moved. I want to start with you, Ron, on this one. Looking at the theme of the day, trying and innovation is a sustainable response to COVID-19 pandemic. Do you think it is? And if it is, how?
I think that defined. If innovation in regards to business survival, building resilience within the business, and yes. Again, what we've seen, I think as a business communities, we've been exposed. Our soft underbelly has been exposed. The reality is that for a lot of companies, did not have resiliency built into their structures. They did not have a lot of capital put aside to manage this kind of market hiccups. They did not have skill set within their teams to be able to manage this. I saw companies who were scrambling. They didn't have anybody on their team who could manage a website, who could do social media, who could do the digital things they needed to survive. And they did not invest in their teams, especially on the soft skills. Because when you require your team to work from home, you need good communicators among that team to work. Very good leadership and very good project management skills that many companies did not have. They needed good IT skills, as the board TRA gentleman was telling us, that these things need good IT skills that you cannot just build up on day one. Analysis, critical thinking, business survival, those are skills that many companies did not have. And so, yes, we need innovation, but also we need the right skill set. And so if one thing that we're taking away from this COVID crisis is how do we build resiliency into our businesses? Technology is one, the right teams and skill set is another, specifically the soft skills. Being more agile to meet the changing consumer needs is another. So companies that are not agile enough will not survive very well. So innovation only happens in the context that you have the right people doing the right thing, who fully understand the changing needs of the customers. And so it's a yes and no for me. So you need both innovation but also the skill set and the desire of the companies as well.
In your submission, do you intend to mean that the sustainability of what we have seen happening with those who have adopted is somehow questionable?
No, I think that the lessons are long-lasting. Lessons are long-lasting, but those who will survive will depend on how well they adopt to these new changes. So yes, some things will not go back to normal, but many others will go back to normal. And we've seen here in Uganda in the last 3 to 6 months that a lot of the industries were beginning to come back. Obviously, we're very fortunate that Uganda heavily depends on, exports to an extent. Gold and coffee didn't drop in pricing. What we saw, the biggest impact was on tourism and was on the imports were coming in the supply chain. But majorly, this country was not as affected as most countries. I mean, we still grew, we're still going to grow in 2020 and we're still going to grow in 2021. We're not in a recession. So some things will come back. The question is, how will you come back? And for me, I believe that when others are improving, other organizations are investing in innovation and technology, other organizations are investing in the soft skills for their teams, other organizations are investing in making their capital reserves much stronger and building resiliences in their businesses. If you're not doing that, comparatively, you're sinking and the others are growing. So the question is, you might come back, but you'll come back with a huge disadvantage. And that's what we need to make sure that all of us collectively, we don't sink, but we add all these attributes to our businesses.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Rajesh, in line with that, and also knowing that your company is one of those who have continued in business, how do you appreciate that productivity, technology, and innovation is really a good response? And is it really a good response? And if yes, how?
Yes, I would start with a quote: change is the essence of life. Be ready to surrender what you have to become what you could be. So yes, I fully agree that productivity, technology, and innovation could be a good response to fight this COVID-19 pandemic. Let me give you some examples where innovation and technology is helping in last 1 year to many businesses. Of course, e-commerce, which we have talked, university and school education. Also recently, the exams are conducted online with various tools which have been developed, and meetings and webinars. The lead past have been developed in last 1 year. Many companies have developed. Since will be much faster even what we have seen in last 1 year. Also, because of this online coaching, a rural student can get the best teacher in the world, and that teacher can teach thousands of students around the world. So the accessibility has increased in the education sector. Also in the medical sector, there is a lot of virtual consultation of doctors is happening around the world. Going to reach working from home area where this innovation and technology has helped. So business people who are adopting this new technology and innovation will survive and will grow, and businesses who are not adopting that, they will be left behind. Thank you.
It is really interesting hearing. Yes, Jean, what do you share about this?
So much. I'm positive that productivity, tech, and innovation are going to be very critical, and I implore business owners, CEOs, basically everyone in a position where they can make change, to ask themselves 3 questions, and those 3 questions are literally: what will the work look like a year down the road? A business reevaluation of your entity, and then who's going to do what, and where is going to be the new workplace? And I'll give you a little bit of those answers. So we found that what will work look like is we're going to have to depend a lot on technology. Now we don't have options like we did before. So we're going to have to depend on technology much more than before. But it's also important to understand some tech language. For the longest time, the people in the technology space made it look very complicated. And so all of us stepped back and were like, I don't understand those things, so I won't get into it. So I'd like you to understand basic things like cloud computing, because they have a very big impact on your business. As a business owner, or as an entrepreneur, or as a boss, wherever you are, or as an employee, you must understand what cloud computing, because if you don't understand cloud, you're going to ask your staff to go back to office every day of their working life. because what cloud does is that it makes sure that your staff can work everywhere they are. You're going to understand concepts like what artificial intelligence is. And I don't know why they complicate language. One of my professors says that if you cannot explain a concept to a 7-year-old child, go back and refine it. And when they use difficult words like artificial intelligence, it looks like a big monkey out there. But you as a business owner, when you understand it's a basic thing, making machines do what a person can do. Simple. How do you then apply artificial intelligence in your business? And I'll give use case examples of where we did that. You need to also understand, going back to the basics, things like the chef takes the order. And I found that that was one of the most powerful things we did in our business reorganization. What does that mean? When you go to a restaurant and you sit and a waiter comes to you and asks for your order, fish, chips, and I don't know what else people eat, they'll have to go to the kitchen and explain the same concept to the chef, who then has to say, was it spicy or not? So something gets lost in the detail. How do you then reorganize your business processes to make sure that you cut out most of those legs that bring confusion so that the chef takes the order themselves? Because then you do not lose the message in there, in the translation. And then you must make sure that your customers or your stakeholders or your beneficiaries can self-serve. And I like the question that one of the attendees asked on the technical teams have to be in the field. I was very amazed that during COVID, what brought businesses to a standstill, mostly so the banks that we thought were ahead of their game, was the biggest, and I must declare, I sit on the Housing Finance Bank board, Mr. Okuish, and yes, yeah, but the biggest thing that shocked us was that the banks were not very ready. They said our customers will come. They hadn't built that muscle. So that is what you have to think about the work side. So when you ask yourself who will do what, ladies and gentlemen, to burst the bubble that we refused for the longest time, especially people from my generation and before, was we were managing by seeing. That's my new favorite job. Where your manager has to see you and say, Jean, did you show up? Literally, that's it. And I like that Anders talked about it. We must remember that the people who we're leading are going to be of another generation mostly. And so we have to encourage certain kind of behaviors, critical thinking, creative. How do you enhance the role that you're doing to give me better productivity and value at the workplace? We must stop asking people to work as lone rangers. Our performance appraisals have been built to have one-star performer. So who was the best this year in I don't know what customer experience? We must encourage people to work in groups. That's the only way you will monitor performance when they're not sitting in front of you. And we must also accept as organizations, we will never have all the resources we need. So we must get into getting online collaborative resources. Case in point, if I want to execute anything now, I am not going to rely on the resources in my company only. I will hire a kid in Hungary who is going to implement it for me at $1,000 only versus hiring what wrongly is called a warm body in Uganda to execute something over a period of 3 years. And I don't know if I can make that clearer, but let's open our minds to global. And the last one, where is the workplace? Let's make the workplace what they call ubiquitous. You can work anywhere. I know that there'll be a story on staff engagement, and I'll come to that in the next question, but we need now inbuilt mechanisms where, yes, it's good for us to commute, but we must leave enough leeway where people can work anywhere because we've given them the tools. Thank you so much.
It's really interesting hearing from these experts. Yes, Dr. Nahamia.
Thank you, moderator. I think the keynote address exhausted that area, that actually there is a lot we can get as far as technology and innovation being a good response to COVID-19. So I really want to add on what my colleagues have said. One of the things I would add on is I think this COVID-19 has allowed us to think outside the box. And in terms of thinking of manufacturing a number of equipments which were not even thought about, even in Africa, because as you may be aware, there are a number of attempts in terms of coming up with the ventilators. I think there was a serious attempt in Nigeria and other countries, and coming up with medical diagnostic kits, which are even very, very fast. And I don't want to go into details. I think the keynote, and that helped us. The AU has started the medical, they are calling it the African Medical Supplies Platform, and where they share various views and so on. Then there are also the issues of leveraging the indigenous African knowledge. And I think it is inciting us to come up, and I hope it's not going to be put aside. And that helps us to have those kind of innovations which can help. And there are also challenges, as much as we've been awakened to start e-learning, and but the challenge more so when it comes to the TVET sector where I belong, there are a number of challenges when you are talking about e-learning. In a country where you have institutions with barely no facilitating gadgets, facilitating equipments, and so on. You have institutions without computers and so on. But in some areas of technical vocational education and training, it is a bit a challenge to talk about e-learning. But it has also been an attempt, and I think the process continues on. And I hope maybe with the further engagement that is going to help a lot. And of course, other issues of the dashboards. I think the key presenter talks about the dashboards and that have been used in and to monitor. I think Rwanda was using GIS to trace the COVID contacts and so on. And those are things maybe that had not been thought about. So despite those challenges, but I think innovation can really go a long way to become a response.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I think let me just start from there. Could you share with us your experience of the institution, how best you've embraced technology and innovation in responding to COVID?
Yes, as a board, we have really had a number of things at Uganda Business and Technical Examinations Board. One of them is that, of course, when we went into lockdown, we used it to collect marks. We call it continuous assessment marks. Our assessment is such that when we are assessing technical colleges or institutions, they assess at 40% score, and then we assess at national level at 60%. We are not like the Uganda National Examinations Board. So those marks are collected and brought at the secretariat, and when you find institutions like Uganda Technical College, Ergon, with very many students, they would almost bring sacks of files with marks and so on. And then, but we had already started the examination information management system, which we now quickly upgraded because we could now not allow institutions to come at the center, and we quickly engaged the ICT expert to upgrade, and now all the continuous marks assessment are uploaded on the system, and so far it is working very well because we have now gone into training the registrars, but also online. So that is one of the things which we think has helped us out of a challenge. We think we have come out with something very good. And the same thing, we use it to register students by registrars again coming at the secretariat, but we have also gone online registration, and to us that has really helped a lot, that despite some few challenges that go alongside that, but mainly the challenges are to do with the slow mind change in terms of quickly adopting to the online registration. The other issues, we've had some quite a number of meetings, and some of them very productive meetings. Our chair is actually the chair for Federation of Uganda Lawyers, that is Engineer Dr. Mugisha. He said, no, that is the only way. And we have had a number of virtual board meetings and even feedback workshops where we would, after our assessment, we normally bring to share a number of people from all over the country to share with them the processes, the challenge, and so on. And we have had them at various levels, the feed virtual workshops, and that reduces costs really to a very, very great extent. So we have embraced it despite those few challenges that are ongoing.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm happy you have also hit on the other point of the challenges, which I would ask at a later stage. But thanks that you've touched it, and I would encourage that we all do that. So, Jane, what has been your experience, and based on the fact that you are an expert in that area of technology, how have you embraced it, and what are some of the challenges you have encountered in the process of embracing technology?
Thank you so much. Expert is a very big word, but I'm on a journey. Okay, so I'll give use case examples, and I'll also explain a case for a smaller business, because the question will be, how do I then carry that to a business that is smaller? So the first thing we did was dashboards, and we did dashboards using something called Power BI. It's on Microsoft. So we are all, I'm sure, Microsoft users, and we don't use even a tenth of the product that Microsoft gives. Most of them that are already paid for through your company, but some you'll pay an extra $5 per user to get beautiful things. So we used something called Power BI, and we opened up most of our processes. And in opening up those processes, what we then did was then I gave my MD visibility of his whole business. The company that I worked for had an MD, and he allowed me to use his example. Then who would walk in and just be upset because something happened, but he could not put his finger on where exactly and who did. So with these dashboards, when he walked in every morning, he knew what the problem was. Was it investments? Was it operations? Was it business? If it was business, is it Lira branch? If it's Lira branch, is it Jen? If it is Jen, what's the problem? And I'll tell you the power of dashboards. So when I got dashboards in operations, and what it did is that every morning, when I woke up on the way to work in traffic, I would tell that there's a lady in, I'll give an example, Sekabale branch, who has had a customer visit her 21 times in a month. So I would call in the morning and say, are you dating? Why is the customer coming always to the branch? What is it that we can't solve? Do you need help? So dashboards, but we also automated performance monitoring. When you automate performance monitoring, you get out of difficult conversations with staff, where you said, no, I did it the other day. Because the performance shows on a dashboard, we had screens in some places, but you could access it on your phone and any electronic. So that then showed the run rate per staff member every day. So I did replicate the same process with the same team of Ugandan people, and we did it at Uganda Clays, where we went and said, here, we've given you dashboards. The problem is not, let's say, Kajansi, it's, say, the branch at Uma Grounds, and the sales run rate is so low. So dashboards are important in automation. The other thing that we did was we applied machine learning in Uganda, and many people say these things can't be done, and I'm like, the names of people who do these things have the same surnames as the rest of us. What's machine learning? So machine learning is basically creating enough data in the system so that now the system can replicate human actions. One of the first board meetings that I sat in as head of department, a report was made to the board that said to solve the data cleaning problem would take 27 years of human man hours. When we put machine learning to do the solution, it took us 9 months to remove the data cleaning problems. We cannot underestimate the power of technology, you know. So if 27 years of man hours, people doing rudimentary routine work, boring, creating errors, not motivated, you get a university degree holder to do data entry every day. That does not give me joy as a human resource person. What else did we do? We created chatbots. So there's a chatbot we created called Sanyu. So chatbot basically answers customer queries, which are basic most of the time. What is my balance? I don't need a person who's pursuing their masters to answer that your balance is 350. You just link them in the system. The other use case that I found very exciting, we created predictive analytics into our system. So what we did was that I could tell, today is a Friday, I could tell tomorrow 400 customers are going to call in. However, I knew that 30 of those will call in between 1 and 2, and in that way I could do my workforce planning. That is so powerful to staff, because remember, most people will staff, say, a call center with 100 people, But those 100 people sometime will be redundant. You've called them to work, they've left their beautiful families and everything else that they could do, because you don't know what your business is going to be like tomorrow. You cannot predict. So we could predict these 30 people will call between this time, 50 between this time. So then we resource in that way and then make sure that staff use their valuable time to do value adding activities. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yes, Mr. Rajesh, in the graphics, what have you done and what are some of the challenges in adopting it?
Thank you. Our company graphic system have successfully adopted in the last year, 2020, the technology and the innovative method, and we saved our company from the disaster. I really mean disaster. The reason why I'm saying is that our company deals in the packaging material and the advertising material for 80% of the industry in Uganda. Now, advertisement business was zero. From wherever it became zero because there was no company doing advertisement. That was a big blow to us. The industrial products, yes, our factory worked for all those months in the lockdown, but our clients' requirement and demand reduced less than half. So our company has to suffer. So, but we were very lucky with our team, and we sat together and specifically we put the question that it is a COVID situation. Now, what can we do in the COVID situation so that we can get some additional or extra or new sales? Where we used to manufacture t-shirts. We had sewing machines. We had around 70, 80 sewing machines. So we thought, why not we think of producing reusable non-medical masks? And we imported another 200 machines. We gave jobs to another 150 more people. When everybody was being retrenched in other companies, we recruited another 150 more people. And we did a great sales in masks. Then we did a value addition also. We were the first one where our mask was approved by Ministry of Health and UNBS. Then we did a value addition. We were among the first company to launch branded masks for the corporates and various other organizations in the country. And I think that has saved our company from the disaster of 2020. Apart from that, our marketing team were working from home for at least 2-3 months. So we developed a lot of digital videos, very creative ones, which were very much liked by our clients. And it has helped also to stay in touch with our clients. And whether we got the sales or not, but we were in touch with our clients through those digital videos. Another innovative product which we developed, that when this COVID started, we put some signages in our factory for civic education for our staff, what to do and what not to do. Now, suddenly one day I realized that this signages, each and every company or organization in Uganda needs it. Why not we market it? And we started marketing it through digital videos. We have not visited any company. And I think more than 100 companies and organizations, we sold those civic education signages and material. We even went to the State House and we fixed the signages at the State House. And His Excellency, when he visited the NRM office, he appreciated those signages. So that was a business, I think more than $1 million we got sales, additional sales from that product. Of course, like everybody else, we used to have online meetings and working from home. But these were the two products which we developed with innovation, and we were very successful, and we survived the year 2020. Thank you.
Did you experience any challenges in embracing that technology? Yes.
No, we didn't experience any challenges. Our team was very much well motivated because we have not retrenched a single staff during that period. So the staff was thankful to us and they supported the crisis. When the president appealed that the factory can run, but your workers have to sleep at the factory, and our staff didn't went home for 1 month and they were working in the factory. So they were well motivated and they helped us in surviving that situation.
Okay. Yes, Ron?
As a tech company, there was not a lot of adaptation to do on the tech side, but we leveraged an existing network of our warehouses, pickup stations, fleets for delivery, vendor drop-offs. But what we did different was making sure that they're safe for our customers. We have two main models. One of them is the on-demand service, which is Jumia Food, and the other is the main e-commerce platform, which is an online mall. And each one of them requires a lot of interaction with customer products. What we have already is that we have an automated process. From the moment a customer places their order online, whether it's a food item from a restaurant, this order is communicated to the restaurant in an automated way. We don't need to call them, they receive them on their tablet. Once that order has been accepted by the restaurant, the system finds the closest driver who receives it. Now, this driver before that was handling the food. What we put in place is that at every restaurant, before a driver picks up a food item, the temperature must be scanned and recorded on the slip. So we know what body temperature they had when they picked up that food item from the restaurant. We also, of course, had hand gloves, had face masks, had sanitizer, and also we delivered in a contactless way. So the item is dropped off at the door. So there's no interaction between the driver and the customer. We also encouraged customers to prepay online. So rather than giving us cash, which is an opportunity for transmission, is that we encouraged and incentivized prepayment using Visa, MasterCard, or mobile money, and we saw a big uptake in that. Within our warehouses, we separated our warehousing teams into three. And the goal here was to make sure that if an infection happened in one group, we could contain it. So we had 3 shifts, and after every shift we disinfected the warehouses. And I can say that despite, and we had a couple infections in the office teams, but we never got a single infection in the warehouse teams. That's well above 500 employees. But because of these processes, keeping them in groups and disinfecting as often as we can, and obviously during the lockdown as well, we had these guys staying very close to the warehouses. We rented hotels at times because we never had capacity to house everybody at the warehouse. We managed to keep running. For us, staying alive meant that our warehouses must be open. So even one infection in the warehouse at the height of COVID would have meant we shut down. And then so we made sure that the safety standards were in place to protect our employees and to protect our customers. So technology wasn't necessarily what we relied on, was more process level and education to make sure that we can keep everybody in the chain as safe as we could.
Ron, I really want to get off this. We are time bad. I just want to ask one single question, and then we'll be able to open up and go into vote of thanks. What do you think can be done to enhance innovation and productivity at the workplace? Starting from Ron, what do you think can be done?
I think what can be done to enhance innovation is this last 16 months have shown us the need to use innovation and to increase productivity. And already there's been lessons. I think one of the big lessons has been there's been a mental barrier, in the sense that a lot of employers did not imagine that productivity would not be affected by people staying home. Another thing that we realized, because during COVID, people had to wear several hats. HR teams had to be medical experts, marketing teams had to become IT experts, and so on and so on. Finance teams had to wear other hats as well. So the reality is that we see that people can multitask, and that there's a clear need for teams that are well balanced, who have more skills than just one. And so you'll see that our hiring needs going forward will favor people who are well balanced, people who have not the hard skills that the universities do teach, but the soft skills that are much more difficult to acquire in schools. Critical analysis, project management skills, good communication skills. So to be able to use fewer people and doing better or more work. So our needs are going to change. But then also, we need people who can help us innovate. So I think many companies have realized that they need to survive, and at a time when they needed innovation, perhaps they didn't have the teams to be able to support that. What do we need? We need employees. We need our investment priorities to reflect the changing need of the market, innovation, safety of our customers, and the desire to have fewer people, and those people essentially working from home or working remotely. Space allocation and space need. Do we really need to rent how many square meters skyscrapers? The reality is not. I think companies are beginning to realize that we would rather invest that money in growth, invested in marketing, invested in teams, hiring the right teams, than renting very expensive offices and skyscrapers. And so the priorities are changing. And I think this is what companies now need to look at. We agree that due to the changing times, due to the changing desires of customers, we need to innovate and we need to be more efficient. What do we deprioritize? So we deprioritize renting expensive offices and hiring people who are not adaptable and agile, be able to take on more hats. So the only way we close the gap on innovation and productivity is to cut out what we don't think is as high priority as innovation and productivity.
Thank you, Mr. Rajesh.
Okay. Like innovation means thinking out of the box and to be creative and ready to accept the change. We need to think about new products, new customers, new marketing strategies. I'll just give an example of the tourism industry. Now, in some parts of the world, I'm not sure about Uganda, tourism has two segments. One is international tourist and one is the local tourist. And I strongly believe that in Uganda, the local tourism is negligible. If we could have used this situation to market the local tourism in Uganda, tourism industry could have been better than what it is today. So we need to look for new markets, new customers. So the local tourists are it's a new market, new customers for the tourism industry. As my neighbor, she said that artificial intelligence, robots are coming into the market. They will be competing with the human beings. So the productivity of the human beings need to be increased. Now working from home, when people work from home, as our lead speaker, our keynote speaker said, that they should not work alone, they should work with colleagues. Now, even we need to develop new KPIs, new methods of KPIs for the people who are working from home, so which will enhance the productivity of our people. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Jean.
So much. The first thing that I would advise is, when you have a team, if possible, split it into 3. So what I usually do when I find a team, I'll have 10% to totally innovate as my A team, and then 70% to do. So the innovators pass down things for the 70%. And then I'll have 20% who are the team that struggled with change. They are not bad people. It's just that we have a different adaptability to change. And they'll always exist. Even I resist certain things. I resisted mobile money for the longest time. Now I use it all the time. So I came and surpassed those who came before me. So that's the first thing that I'd advise, because innovation space, we have different gifts. Some people are gifted in different ways. So recognize who are those people and then give them the challenge to think. And if the 70% want to move into the 10, encourage them. The second thing is be obsessive with the customer. I found that when you're obsessive with the customer, you will innovate because the customer gives real-time feedback, but also you want to know what your competition is doing. So you keep refining your processes until you're on top of the game. So when we got obsessive with our customer, found out who they are, where they are, what their needs are, our mindset shifted overnight, and we started chunking out products and services that basically blew them away. We call it the wow factor. And then lastly, you will fail. We've demonized failure in many quarters, especially our education system. So every time I wake up, in my brain, I know that there has to be room to what they call sandbox, do products or services that will fail. I don't want to beat the team up so hard, because when you beat them, it's a disincentive. And next time they will not run to come to the market. So those are the three things. Okay.
Yes, thank you. There are about 3 or 4 related things, and one of them, I think companies need to invest in R&D, research and development, research and product development, and this is the time it is really required most. And once you do that, then all aspects of businesses would be required, and then you follow up what do the customer need and so on in relation with what Jane is saying. And again, we need to motivate workers with rare skills. Workers, as she said, workers are not the same. But we need to bring that group that you're aware that they have rare skills and need to be supported, need to be motivated by all means. And of course, incubation centers, innovation and incubation centers in Uganda have not been given a very serious thought. And to me, that would really be something that can help us to move alongst the such circumstances. But also businesses need to be supported. We've talked about like softwares, us in the training sector institutions, because those are also businesses. Since Uganda opened up also the education, liberalized the education sector, we've got institutions finding it very hard when it comes to maintaining and purchasing engineering software skills of the AutoCADs and even others in the business accounting softwares, which are used for training and then assessment. And I think unless government comes in to support the stimulus kind of package, I don't know, if they were there, they were not handled very well. I think they need to really be handled very well. And which businesses are you supporting? Have you collected enough data to support them? I think once you do that and you do it well, I think we shall keep moving on well. And maybe lastly, I think there is a need to invest in attitude change. That really helps a lot, the attitude change towards the customer, towards everything. Sometimes it is not the big things. It's not even the price that may attract more customers, but the way you bring up the several soft skills and so on. When somebody buys your thing, a thank you can do a lot, bringing him back than even the price. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nahamia and the team. I just want to give each one of you 1 minute to say a final word. I'm starting from.
Yes, thank you. The final word is that change and change and change. Once you don't change, then change may disappear with you. If we had a lot of time, I was going to make several citations of people have talked about change, attitude change, and innovations can make wonders for us to move to the next level of development. Thank you.
Thank you. Jean?
On what Professor has said. So mine is to say change is not an event, it's an everyday process. It's not something you say. I know most organizations say we have change management program running. I stand back and I'm like, what do you mean? Change is something that you do every day. It's an iterative process that you must consistently do in your organization.
Yes, Mr. Rajesh?
Summarize, I will say the world has responded to this COVID-19, according to me, in 3 ways. Response number 1 was an immediate response, and it will stay until the COVID stays. And that is wearing the mask, because the mask cannot continue and cannot become a dress code like a tie. Second, social distancing. That has to go away with the COVID, because we understand the power of the touch. And the third is the ban on physical gathering events, because we need entertainment, it has to go. So the 3 response which has happened in the world has to go with when the COVID goes. The second response which world has reacted, but it has to be adopted with caution. And one is that we are adopted online meetings and webinars. This also has to be mixed with the physical meeting and physical conferences. Why I'm saying that the physical meeting gives a scope for networking. Also, it gives a scope of meetings on the side. And also, when you are physically watching your colleagues around, you see the body language, which makes a lot of sense. So we need physical meeting, but we need also those online meetings and seminars. So it has to go with the mix. And the third one, the technology and the innovation has given us a lot of products, which we have talked a lot, and which will stay for years to come. And the last, I would make one statement that some countries around the world were busy under the cover in the biological warfare. And I think this pandemic should be a lesson to them that biological warfare is not the way to go. It can be a disaster to the humankind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, Mr. Ron?
It's indeed, I've spoken about the need for using technology and innovation and efficiencies. I want to perhaps point on one aspect that is very important at any time to be able to scale a business. But more important in this period of COVID is the need for more strategic partnerships. COVID has put in place some limitations that sometimes one company cannot solve all the issues of supply chain, last mile delivery, of market conditions, government action. There's a clear need to work together strategically. We've seen some successful strategic partnerships. I've seen a friend, Amos Wakesa, now partnering with Talent Africa to take people out more in experiential local tourism. We've done a few of them with the beverage companies like Coca-Cola and others. There's a clear need. I've seen there's a local company called Feza that brings entertainment to your home through a mobile app, working with artists to continue to make money while they're home. The reality is that these times are unprecedented, and they call for more collaboration. They call for more strategic partnerships, and I think very often we're looking at what we can do internally, our own capacity, we're looking at competition, but we're not looking for opportunities to collaborate. And when you find these opportunities to collaborate, it's cheaper. In my opinion, the cheapest way to scale any business is through partnerships. And so I think it's one thing that perhaps we need to do more, potentially even under FUE as well.
Thank you very much, our panelists. I did not open up a discussion because we are really time bad, and I felt we needed to keep it and at least leave earlier. We already beyond by 39 minutes. So please, you'll allow me, you'll excuse me for that, unless there's something very critical, someone who could have wanted to mention something or ask something related to the panelist. I can give chance to only 3. One lady, then there's a gentleman. The third one? Okay, those are enough. Let me begin with the lady, then the gentleman, and then we close this.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. The panelists, thank you so much. Jumia, every time I open my phone on YouTube, it is you that I see. And so it's an honor, meeting with you in the tech space, very interested in the tech space. CEO, Afroz and Mo. I've just gotten into the beauty industry just to change the narrative, okay? I think I have a submission, and it is in the area of innovation. I think one thing that I think I've seen that nobody has noticed, has talked about, we've spoken so much about the technology and innovation. However, we have not broken down innovation. How are we going to innovate? And this is where my submission is, that I think is what we call the inner man concept, okay? The inner man concept, it's going to help us trust our teams, release, let go of what we know, separate ourselves. 3, you've been speaking about 3. The power of taking yourself away for about 3 days to rethink outside of what you know, because we're not going to find new things. Remember, we said old ways won't open new doors. We are going to go back inner, and bizarre ideas will come from the inner. And it will take you about 3 days to break the normal pattern that you know. 3 days, split in 3 days, and then whichever ideas will come up, it will refresh, it will give you bizarre ideas. Any bizarre idea that you get, come and work it out. The great book tells us, behold, I am doing a new thing, don't you perceive it? Can't you perceive it? It had to take COVID, it had to take a lockdown to perceive the new thing, but the new thing is inner, okay? The new thing is inner. And he says, I will give you new ways, great and unsearchable things that you know nothing about. Jeremiah 3:33, still 3, okay? That's nothing that you know about. And in closing, I would say that I believe COVID has taken us from the caterpillar stage where there was too much happening, so much happening, too busy, too everything. And it has taken us to allow the pupa stage, so that the place of innovation comes from the butterfly. And so for me, that's my submission. The inner man, using the inner man concept. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would have missed out that. So thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you so much. I'm Douglas Naula Kachuch, the CEO of Sorot Fruits Limited. We make Teju juice, if you have seen it. I want to thank our panelists. That was good. We appreciate what you have presented. Also thank the Federation. Now my submission is, in our discussion, mostly I think I should call them sectors. There are 2, service and maybe production. Fortunately, it just comes from the production, okay? As a federation, as CEOs, I think we should now engage in a talk where we are going to, maybe in future, advise government well. I've heard the one presenter saying some countries are in 4th wave, 5th wave. So we are not sure when COVID will go. That is the reality. But now we are sure we have had, for example, a wave. We did also have a lockdown. I can't comfortably tell you if that lockdown wasn't lifted, there are items which we are going to stock out from the supermarkets, from wherever they are sold. Now, unfortunately, we seem to have not looked at it well. In the event another lockdown ever happened, have we done some troubleshooting to know? For example, there are issues which are clear for manufacturers. If I have 250 workers, 100 of them are ladies, 150 are male, how am I going to house them for Christ's sake? We did it in a short term, okay? I've had one of our colleagues saying he hired hotels in a short what? If you had a prolonged lockdown as a business, could we sustain it? I think we need to engage on a particular talk where the public doesn't necessarily suffer. The other issue is, I'm glad somebody came up with the word collaboration. If, for example, he makes for me labels, his same workers will take my juice, okay? Where we have reached COVID, I think is opening up our minds. We have to have sectors which are sustainable. The raw materials, for example, you get them from farmers, you process, the customers are within the same country, and everything is within there. Then lastly, I also want to mention, I've had 100 and something talks on working at home, okay? Some of us come from setups where some particular offices you can't work at home. For example, if you're a chemist, you have to continuously take samples from the line as production is happening. If you're a maintenance engineer, there is no way. Your KPI is simple, downtime. The moment the machines are down, so some of these other posts, people have to work from the production line. But now we need to know how we advise government such that the next lockdown, we don't choke. What do I mean by choking the value chain? If I say the manufacturer stays open, then the wholesaler has to stay open. What I manufacture goes to the wholesaler. Then the wholesaler has to sell to the retailer. The moment I manufacture, most of these manufacturers, they don't tell you, but their warehouses were choked at one time, choked with expiries. So I thought it important that I bring it forward such that somewhere in the near future, we have a common what? Otherwise, thank you so much, panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a very interesting one, and I think it's something what the FUE to take up. Is actually in a lobbying area, and indeed we need to take it up. Thank you so much, our panelists and the CEOs. A round of applause to our panelists as they get started. I thank you so much. We'll be moving on. This is an interacting session, like I said earlier. We're interacting, but before that, I want us to have a vote of thanks from Aisha Mambo. I don't know why the name was sorry, Aisha Mambo. Yes. And then later we'll go into a group photo that we can keep interacting.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The name is Aisha Nante Mambo, the Director of Human Resources, Sheraton Kampala Hotel. Happy to be enlightened here today, and Ms. Opio, thank you so very much. I will just highlight a little bit on the tourism. I will not be doing a service to my industry if I don't say anything about tourism before I go into the vote of thanks. We are very uncomfortable in our comfort. We used to rely on international market, as you said, but we've gone local. We're getting a lot, and our people really are enjoying the services of the hotel industry.
So we still call upon you, Serena, Sheraton, Pearl of Africa, Africana, we still need your support. So we cannot die away because Corona will go away one day and we need to let this building still serve us. So these are your meetings. Back to what I'm here to do. I would like to thank all the CEOs that took time out of their busy schedules to come and attend this breakfast meeting today. We know you're very busy and it's great to see you here and it's great networking. We'd like to thank the panelists that have given us a lot of insight, and we know we are taking a lot from what you've told us. Technology, we know it's not going away. I was amazed how I had to do a virtual call with a doctor to treat my 6-month baby, and then they had to send something that I had to put on her finger to prickle and get the blood back to the lab. I never went anywhere. So I believe we will really embrace technology. It's slow, but we'll get there. Thank you so very much for that message that you've given us today. I would thank the employers' representatives that are here today. You've really done great, and I hope you take the message back to the organizations and tell them that it's no longer, we could employ as many people as we want, but we also need to invest a lot in technology, as we've been told today. It's no longer a term of saying we have no budget. It can't work anymore. So let's look at the things and buy technology relevantly. We are all running to buy anything that we've seen on the market, but not doing a feasibility study to see if it will work for us. So we've had this, and it will be great to go back and tell them. The Secretariat, you're doing a great job. I've followed you through the Corona times. We've talked to the governments together to see how we take care of our employees. And we are here today to be able to continue this journey. Thank you so very much, and we hope for better to come. So with this, I think whoever I've not thanked, the cameraman, I'm really sorry. I thank you too. And everyone that was involved to make this day special. Serena Hotel, we are competitors, but I love you. So I thank you too for giving us this service today. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Aisha Mambo, for the vote of thanks. We are going to have our group photo from outside there. I invite you all for the group photo. And then we can also have a very interaction before we leave. I thank you so much. The group photo is just outside there, where we've been having our tea.